In a world of confusion and agendas, there are certain facts and truths you can count on. One such truth is that one day the church age will end. Another fact and truth is that Jesus Christ is coming again. And we will all stand before the judgment seat of Christ when that moment comes. What will you offer at the judgment seat of Christ? That's coming up next as we continue with this season of His coming. Arkansas Live starts right now. Before we get into our conclusion and our final statement, what will you offer at the judgment seat of Christ? Let me ask you this question. Will you make the rapture? Now, if you joined us all week, and especially yesterday, you might be able to answer affirmative. The rapture of the church is referred to in 1 Thessalonians 4, 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 Corinthians 15. There are events that will take place in heaven that depend on the rapture of the church. In other words, if there is no pre-tribulation rapture, then these events that we've read about and studied and are in the Scriptures are of no significance. But there are several events in heaven that include the saints. And I always remind people that believe that the church is going to go through the Great Tribulation period, that after Revelation chapter 4, the church is never mentioned again as being on the earth. After Revelation chapter 4, the church is in heaven with Christ, not on the earth. So the church could not possibly go through all of the events that are going to take place during the Great Tribulation period. You got to realize the Great Tribulation period is not for the church. The body of Christ has been caught up to meet Christ in the air, and for specific reasons. Here are some of the events in heaven that include the saints. Revelation chapter 19, verse 7, the marriage supper of the Lamb. Now, if you're taking notes, write that down. The marriage supper of the Lamb. That's when the saints of God, the believers, the Christians, the church, all meet together with Jesus, that we have the marriage supper of the Lamb. I've related this several times. My wife, Jeannie, in a time of worship and prayer and with the Lord, just worshiping Him, loving Him, she just said, "Oh, Lord, I want to touch you." And He said, "You can touch me when you get to heaven." And she said, "Lord, everybody's going to want to be touching you when we get to heaven." He said, "At the marriage supper of the Lamb, I will personally serve you, and you can touch me then." Whew, wow. Think of it, folks. I mean, it's time to start thinking these things. Think this through. This is real. This is coming to pass. It is going to happen. The Bible says it is. Now, either you believe the Bible or you don't. And, you can struggle with it if you want to, but there's no need for it. So, the events in heaven include the marriage supper of the Lamb, Revelation 19:7. The marriage of the Lamb, the marriage of the Lamb, 19:7. The marriage supper of the Lamb, Revelation 19:9. And then the opening of the seals. Now let me go over here and read this, because I think it's important with all of the speculation going on in the church today. Revelation chapter 5, and let's look at verse 2. Revelation 5:2. But first let me read Revelation 4, verse 1. After this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven, and the first voice which I heard was as it were a trumpet talking with me, which said, "Come up here, and I will show you the things which must be thereafter." Thereafter what? Thereafter the church age. Let me show you what's going to happen after the church age has ended. Now that sets the time. And notice the language come up here. I heard a trumpet. Thessalonians says we'll hear the trump of God and we'll be caught up together with him. It says we hear the trumpet and it says, come up here. I will show you things which must be hereafter, after the church age. Immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. Now, let's go over to Revelation chapter 5, and what does say? Verse 2. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the book and loose the seals thereof. Now, if you go on and you read all the things that they're referring to, the seals, you get over to chapter 6, and you hear them talk about the seals, the noise of thunder, the four beasts, just a couple of these things. There was there was a white horse. There was a third seal. There was a black horse. There was a sixth seal, a fifth seal. There was a sixth seal, different colored horses. Now, let me ask you a question. When all these things are being poured out on the earth, and these are plagues and death and hell and troubles and tribulations, where is the church? Where is the church? The church is not mentioned at all after Revelation chapter 4. Where is the church? We left the church in Revelation chapter 4, verse 1 and 2. We left the church in heaven. Come up here. I will show you things that must be hereafter, after the church age. The church is seated with Christ in the heavenlies, and he says, I'm going to show you what's going to happen on the earth after the church age is over, after it's finished, after it has ended. And immediately I was in the Spirit, and the throne was set in heaven, and one was set on the throne. So it's very plain to see that the church is no longer on the earth as these seals and horses are released and pouring out all the plagues and the ills. So just remember that every time you hear, and I hear it quite often, what's going on today, Pastor? What's all this stuff we see? And you'll hear well-intended prophetic teachers say, well, this is the sixth seal, or this is the, and they'll name a color of a horse. This is such and such a horse, or this is a seal, or etc., being poured out. Not true. These seals and riders cannot take place until after the catching away of the church. Now let me go back over to Thessalonians, I think is where I want to go. I didn't have my marker in here, so bear with me. Okay, let's go to First Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians. Here we go, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him, that you be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as from us, that the day of Christ is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means. That day shall not come, except there come a falling away first. Did you hear that? Falling away first, that the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. You can translate it this way, paraphrase it. until the departure of the church. You don't need to be afraid. You don't need to be fearful. Don't be troubled. As that day of Christ is at hand, the day of Christ talking about the judgment, let no man deceive you by any means. That day shall not come except there be a departure of the church, until after the church leaves. After the church is caught up together to meet the Lord in the air, after we go into the marriage supper of the Lamb, the marriage of the Lamb, the marriage supper of the Lamb, after we are enjoying the rewards at the judgment seat of Christ, where we are rewarded for that we have done in the body, then will the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Every character has its place. Excuse me. The man of sin, the Antichrist, the false prophet, all of the characters in that tribulation story cannot and will not be revealed until after the church has departed. So it is utterly useless to speculate who these people are. Your speculation will come back to bite you, because if you project and propose this is going to be the Antichrist and this is going to be the false prophet, in the first place, if you're a born-again believing Christian and go up in the rapture, you won't be here anyway. It's good for you to know that all this is going to happen, but don't get off on that rabbit trail. Like one preacher said, he said, I used to know who the Antichrist was. He said, I had lots of Antichrists, but they all died. So don't speculate. Hilton Sutton, probably one of the world's foremost teacher on the book of Revelation, prophecy, end times. And then Charles Capps, dear friend of mine, you see Charles's program right here on VTN every Saturday. They both said the same thing. Do not speculate. You can teach, you can admonish, you can learn, you can rehearse, but don't speculate as to who, when, why, here, so forth, because you just discredit the Scriptures. If God had wanted you to know these things, He would have told you, He would have put them in there. So all your searching, and pardon me, I'm not trying to be critical, but a lot of this stuff is just designed to sell books and tapes. It's just, I can tell you who the Antichrist is. Get this book. It's all designed to sell books, and it confuses people. Okay, so the events that are going to take place in heaven: the marriage of the Lamb, marriage supper of the Lamb, opening of the seals, singing the new song, Revelation 5:9. The church, now listen to this, if you're taking notes, the church did not go to heaven until the last angel's trumpet at the end of the tribulation. If it had, we could not participate in these heavenly events. So if you leave the church on the earth, didn't go up in the catching away, didn't go up in the rapture, then who is going to attend to the judgment seat of Christ? Who's going to attend the marriage supper of the Lamb? The church won't be there if the church goes through the tribulation. Now, I know what a lot of you think, and some preachers preach that the church will be raptured at the end of the tribulation. Well, still, you still miss all of these events that are going on. Okay, there is a difference between Christ's appearing and His return. I want to say that again, because in the rapture, He appears in the heaven. There's an appearance. We go to meet Him. We're changed. You have to be changed to be caught up, to be raptured. You can't take on an incorruptible, immortal body without being changed, because now you have a corruptible, mortal body. To have an incorruptible, immortal body, you have to be changed. So you're going to be changed in the twinkling of an eye. So if the church didn't go to heaven until the last angel's trumpet at the end of the tribulation, there's no church to participate in these heavenly events. Now, let's go back to the appearing. The appearing is when he appears in the clouds, and we go to meet him. His return is when he comes back and every eye sees him. He steps down, he puts his foot on the Mount of Olives, splits that mountain, walks across that Kidron Valley and walks right through that golden gate that's sealed up by the Turks today. That's the difference between his return and his appearing. And when he does all that, when he steps down on the Mount of Olives, splits that mountain, and I've been there many times, and walks across the Kidron Valley, and he goes into that old temple city, the old city gate, and when he does all that, we're going to be with him. We'll be with him. There is no such thing as a figurative return of Christ. Figuratively so, not so. This is going to be an actual event. The Bible describes it and tells us to be ready for it. People who call attention to themselves as to how spiritual they are attempting to gain a following by deception. The Bible tells us not to be troubled. The Bible tells us that Jesus is going to prepare a place for us. In John 14, my Father's house are many mansions. I go there to prepare a place for you. Don't be troubled. I will come again. These are all Jesus' words. I will come again. Preparation for the rapture. Pray, watch, look, occupy. Let me say that again. Pray, watch, look, occupy. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Occupy means to work, to carry on. We're not supposed to be just sitting around, laying around, waiting. We're supposed to be praying, watching, looking, occupying. To me, it's extremely fascinating to see these things unfolding really on a daily basis. We're supposed to be doing business for Christ, eagerly anticipating an event with preparation, commitment to God, His church, dedication, alertness. Don't let these things escape you. Now, let's conclude this week with this last question. What will you offer at the judgment seat of Christ? Whew. You're going to stand before the judgment seat of Christ. What are you going to have to offer? Oh, my goodness. You know, some Christians think that they're going to have to give account of every evil thing that they've ever done in their life. And it just scares them cross-eyed. No, that's not you. Every evil thing that you did in your life has already been covered under the blood. It's in the sea of forgetfulness. Besides that, you couldn't remember every evil deed that you did. Now, let's look here at this a minute. In 1 Peter, let me go over there. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 17. It says, 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 17. For the time is come that judgment must begin at the house of God. If it first begin at us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of God? So judgment begins at the house of God. So we're first. We're first to judge ourselves, prepare ourselves, what we will offer at the judgment seat of Christ. The apostate church is the church that has defiled themselves. The wicked world, nation living in the flesh, Satan and the wicked dead. We can see some of these played out in parables. If we have time, we might try to capture some of this. I would say that we would need to be in a state of self-evaluation, judgment all the time over ourselves. Just do this on a daily basis. My wife and I take communion, the two of us, at home on a regular basis. Sometimes it's daily, sometimes every other day, whatever. But we do a daily confession and we take communion. Preparing ourselves, judging ourselves. Judgment begins first at the house of God, staying ready. Because you don't know when the rapture of the church is going to take place. It could take place anytime. Now, I'm not talking about getting legalistic. If you get into legalism, you've missed the whole point. But stay in an attitude of readiness. Let's kind of go over to Luke 19 and see if we can help ourselves with these parables. Luke 19, and let's look at verse 12. He said, therefore, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. And he called his 10 servants and delivered them 10 pounds and said unto them, occupy till I come. Now this is a type and shadow of the rapture. The citizens hated him, sent a message after him, saying, we will not have this man reign over us. And it came to pass, when he was returned, having received the kingdom, then he recommended these servants to be called unto him, to whom he had given the money, that he might know how much every man had gained by trading. Then came the first, saying, Lord, thy pound hath gained 10 pounds. And he said unto him, well, good servant, because you've been faithful in a very little, you have authority over 10 cities. And the second came, saying, Lord, thy pound hath gained 5 pounds. And he said likewise to him, be thou over 5 cities. And another came, saying, Lord, here is thy pound, which I have kept laid up in a napkin. For I feared thee. There's the key to understanding this guy's problem. I feared you because you're an austere man, and you take up that you laid not down, and reap where you did not sow, which is not possible. And I feared you. And he said unto him, out of your own mouth will I judge you, you wicked servant. You knew that I was an austere man, taking up what I had not sown, reaping where I did not sow. Then you should have given my money to the bank, that at my coming I might have required my own usury. If you really believe that, he didn't believe that. That was an excuse. He said, take then from him the pound and give it to him that hath 10 pounds. For I say unto you that unto every one which hath shall be given, and from him that hath not shall be taken away from him. In other words, God is rewarding the faithful. Here it is. He uses this as an example. The parable of the pounds. 10 pounds first, 5 pounds, 1 pound. Wicked nation. Saints first. Ungodly church. Ungodly nation. Revelation 4, saints seated in heaven. Chapter 5, Great Tribulation period. Chapter 19, Antichrist destroyed. Millennium, chapter 20, Great White Throne, New Heaven, New Earth, chapter 21, Judgment by Fire. Now, let's close out with this. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, and here's how the judgment is going to be metered out. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, and let's look at verse 11. For other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Jesus Christ. He is the foundation. If any man build upon this foundation, gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work will be made manifest. For the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire, and the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. So what are you going to present? What are you going to offer at the judgment seat of Christ? Wood, hay, and stubble? Fleshly, carnal? Or gold? Are you going to reveal the foundation that you built upon? Christ? Gold, silver, precious stones? If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss. But he himself shall be saved, so yet as by fire. So here it is. What are you going to offer? Foundation, Jesus Christ. Everything I did based on that. Account of yourself. Give account of yourself. What you've done in the body. Good, bad. What did you build upon? You're going to be rewarded for those works. Was it for you or was it for the kingdom? What was the attitude? What was the intention? What was your motive? Get all that squared away. That's what you're going to offer at the judgment seat of Christ. Thanks for joining us. Remember, Jesus is Lord of Arkansas, and wherever in the world you're watching too.
Send your questions, comments, and testimonies to Happy Caldwell at Post Office Box 26207, Little Rock, Arkansas 72221, or email happycaldwell@vtntv.com. Remember to follow VTN on Facebook at VTN Your Arkansas Christian Connection, and follow Happy Caldwell on Twitter at Happy_Caldwell. VTN is on Roku. Search VTN in the channel store and add us to your lineup. Today's episode is available to watch on demand at VTNTV.com and click Watch. You can also watch VTN via live stream at VTNTV.com.